Next, we'll be having the lightning talks. The lightning talks are a staple of the developer days at ArabNet, and now we're keeping them with us at the design and code days. We open submissions for the community to propose topics and discussions that they would like to discuss. And from a series of all the submissions we get, we pick 10, and they get to present in back-to-back series.
Good morning, everyone. Thrilled to be here with you tonight. I'm going to be talking about the habits of a good developer, which is a quick walkthrough of the best practices in software development, starting with structuring and designing your code right before engaging. This is actually the one thing that kicks in your mind when you're first starting a new project. You start thinking, where is every component of my code is going to be? Where is it supposed to reside in my system? And the answer for that is to follow a certain pattern. In this example, we're following the MVC pattern, the Model View Controller pattern. And if available, use an open source framework that will save you all the hassle. Not to mention the configuration that our application is supposed to support. For the least we know, our application is going to be running on at least 2 different environments. The first one is the local development environment and the production environment. Your application is supposed to know and recognize the actual environment that is running on, because as we know, on the development environment, we do need debugging results and different output from our application. And we don't want that in the production servers. Moving on to how we write this code. Let's take an example of writing a social layer or maybe a library that communicates with the Facebook API. The actual thing that keeps bugging our mind while developing this application is the question that asks itself, if I ever I'm going to use this library outside my code or maybe in a different part of this application, am I going to change in this code? Am I going to require someone else that is going to be using this library? Is that person going to change something in the code? Of course, other than the configuration attributes like API keys and secrets. And if the answer is yes, then I'm doing it totally wrong. We have to be able to put this library somewhere and just use it as it is. This is what abstraction is. And the only thing that will guarantee your code to scale and add features to it is testing. Now, we're not talking about manual testing here. We're talking about automated tests. Those tests that we run with only one click, and all our models, libraries, functionality, integration are tested for us. We can also have a library called Phantom.js that will test the user experience on our website. It can actually click links and move between pages, enter data inside input text fields, and click buttons, and also evaluate the output out of this. So whenever we add features, we add pages, we change something in our application, all of this testing is done for us in only one click. Now here's where source versioning kicks in. Let's face it, we all would require at some point in time to go back to an older version of our code, regardless of the reasons. But the way to do that manually is to have several copies of your code and get lost with all the hassle. Now, source versioning saves you all this hassle by providing one copy of your code that you work on and several versions of it, and allows you to go back and forth in the versions so that you do not get lost which code is running right now and stuff like that. And not only that, it also introduces the social aspect of collaboration and freedom. We're talking about freedom of changing code. So I have this copy of the code. I can change it as much as I want, but never touch the actual original copy of the code. So and also I can collaborate with all the creators of the code and stuff like that. Last but not least, I would like to introduce you to some of the technologies that I really enjoy developing on. For the front end, we have Backbone, Angular, and Ember. They basically do the same thing. They link your model data to your DOM elements in different ways. And we also have, on the back end, we have Laravel for PHP developers. We have Rails for Ruby and Django for Python developers. And Node.js have become really popular lately, and it serves you on both front end and the back end. There's this application called Dash that provides offline documentation for almost all the syntax programming languages that we use. And for all developers, be friendly with your terminal. It is your best friend. Thank you very much. Again, my name is Awad Halawi, and here's my contact information.
Thank you, Abid. Next, Danny Arnoud.
Hello everyone and welcome. I'm so excited to share this story with you in the next 5 minutes. So let's start with this one. How many Android developers do we have over here? Actually, I'm not one. Oh, cool. So if you ever tried learning Android through YouTube, then of course you have encountered this amazing 200 video tutorials given by my bringback, and in specific this guy over here, Travis. So by the way, Travis is watching the live stream, so hi Travis. Now, Travis had this amazing idea that involved 5 continents, 27 different countries, and over 15 languages. And in just 4 weeks, he gathered 164 members from all around the world. The idea is to create a community of developers, designers, creative mind, and change their ideas into real projects. And he called this community the project. What creative name. So the project is actually a Google Plus community. It's an open source community that at first had this big problem, since there is this huge number of people inside it. We had a problem in managing everything, so we created a mission and vision document, a registration form. We split the community into teams, and we added each person to his appropriate team. And we had a leaderboard. So the leaders had to communicate with each other instantly. So I suggested we use WhatsApp, but they were all like, what's WhatsApp? They didn't know it. So after all, we had our project control room, and we had to find a way to communicate with the rest of the community. So we went with Google Plus Hangouts. We had like a weekly live show, and we had to pick a name for it. And since everything was going through votings, so the community voted for this name, Assembly of the Lords of the Dark Realm of Unicorns. Anyway, so we had our meetings, and we drew the plans. We told them about the steps that we're going to go through, the tools that we're going to use, and the first week was for brainstorming ideas. We had over 57 ideas from different parts of the world. We voted for the top 3, and we started with one app, which is Jokesta app. So here's an example. Some random guy drew this sketch, and some other random guy from different country, a designer, changed it into a real design. We also worked with Git for version control, and we came up with this sample of the Jokesta app that will be launched soon on different platforms. So in the community, in the project community, we had our ups and downs, but all in all, it's going great, and it's a great experience so far. So that's all about the project, and I'm going to go through 8 good things that you will get when contributing to open source communities. Knowledge, technical skills, teamwork skills, global connections, online presence, potential jobs, self-confidence, and satisfaction. And that was all about the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Next up, we have Dareen Sabbagh. We know it's hot. We turned on the AC to the maximum. Just give it a bit to kick in.
Hello, guys. When I first started in a web design company, I couldn't understand why designers and developers couldn't get along. Why do projects get off the rails? Why such a great and brilliant brief never gets read and the project just comes out the wrong way? And why a beautiful, gorgeous design just doesn't work the way that it does? The thing is that designers and developers basically hate each other. So how many of you here are designers and how many of you are designers? A couple of designers and developers. Okay, I hope after this you won't hate me as much. So when this happens, that basically happens because designers and developers think really differently, and also because none of them like to read. So you have to use a few techniques that I think parents use to get their siblings to work together. And I've actually been trying these out on my teams, and with time, they actually bring in harmony to the teams and make them work together. But there's a lot of pressure on the project manager and a lot of work ahead of you, and it's basically psychiatry work. So let's start with the first step. Of course, your dream is to make these two come together, sit in a room, and just work together, but don't start with that yet. Build a wall between them, make them hate each other a little bit more if that's even possible. The first step is dividing and conquering, but you have to do it in a very smart way. And by that I mean, go to your designer and tell her, I know you designed such a beautiful site, and this, the final product, is not what you've designed, and I know it's all the developer's fault. But you know what? Can you just take a couple of screenshots and draw some arrows and tell him where he went wrong? And then you can go to your developer and tell him, I know it's not your job to cut up things and to resize icons. Just email her what you need, and I promise I'll make her do it. So by that, you're building some sort of communication between them. You're teaching them what is the job of each one of them, because between the designer and the developer, there's always that gray area that no one wants to do. So by making them clash a bit together, by taking sides between them, you're just making them understand where each one's job ends and where the other one's job begins. The next step, and you should do it really slowly, is getting them to work together but mediating between them. Like before you even start any project, get the designer and the developer in one room and make them brainstorm. You'll be surprised by how much input your developer has on design, how many new ideas he can give you on different functionalities, and also how many things you can foresee in terms of development, in terms of deadlines when they work together. But don't be surprised if the first time you put them in the room together, they just sit aside and don't talk at all. So here it's your job to prod them with questions, things that you know that they should discuss, like gently nod them, like tell the designer, should you ask him if that menu that you've seen 2 weeks ago works with this site? Things like that. That would make them understand how should they work together in the future. Of course, your ultimate dream is coming one day to the office and seeing your designer and developer sitting on the desk, glaring into the screen and discussing their work together peacefully without fighting and having the project run along, but don't get too excited. That happens over time. So one day when your developer comes in and says, we need to do another run of debugging and let's meet with the designer and just get it done, tell him, you know, I'm really swamped with work. Why don't you do it together this time? Try it out and I promise everything will be okay. You can handle it. So with time, they can learn little by little that they should interact together without any mediation. And it's not going to be easy. Probably they're going to meet and stare at each other for 30 minutes and tell you everything got done, but you have to do that step over and over again so they learn to communicate. And so once this is done, hopefully more and more they start working together and you reach designer-developer love. But I promise you, this state of harmony doesn't last long if you just don't keep repeating step 1 to 4 over and over again. And also there's one more important element, it's education. The thing is that once they graduate from university, designers and developers often forget to check new tools, check new standards, learn what's trending, and here it's your job to tell them what's happening. And that doesn't mean you should send them long emails with links or print out articles, because believe me, they're not going to read them at all. Your job here is to interact with them in a social manner, like come grab some coffee at their desk and slip in between the lines. You know, yesterday I saw this amazing site. I think we should use some features in our next project. Or you should tell them, you know, there's this new iScan that proves that users look at sites this and that way. And at first you may feel that they're not really listening, but after about 9 months, your designer will tell you, remember that iScan you showed me 9 months ago? I decided to develop the site in a different way to accommodate for that. And that's when you understand that you have reached victory. But once again, once the project is finished, you go and show it to the client, and then the client tells you, no, 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 this is not what I wanted. I want a smashing design. And you understand that it's going to happen all over again. Thank you.
Thank you, Dareen. I hope your designers and developers work like that. It doesn't happen like that usually. Up next is Donald Derek Haddad.
Hello, world. I'm not gonna reveal what's inside this box. I'm gonna reveal it at the end, okay? Gonna put it here. So, the JavaScript revolution. From its birth at Netscape in 1994, it really took us 19 years to get here. Now, you can do it all with JS. Like the creator of Node.js, Ryan Dahl, said, JavaScript has certain characteristics that makes it very different than other dynamic languages. And it's mostly because of events. You know, every revolution needs heroes. And the heroes of this revolution is definitely not jQuery. jQuery is like the PHP 4 of JavaScript. The real heroes are Node.js, front-end MV Star framework. It's a bit different from MVC frameworks because they kind of mixed the views and the controllers in the same logic. And from these heroes, we have Backbone.js and AngularJS. Of course, there's a lot, there's other heroes, but this is more like it. What is this Node thing that we're hearing about lately? First of all, you gotta know that it's built on the Google's V8 JavaScript engine. It allows you to build awesome applications. We're gonna see in a bit a couple of examples. It's fast because it's written in C. C code is pretty fast. So what can you build with it? What is this magic? Mostly WebSocket servers are really awesome in Node.js. There's a library called socket.io that really simplifies stuff, and it's cross-platform. Like, imagine it can work on IE6 using different approaches because it's smart. You have fast file upload because it's kind of asynchronous. You can build ad servers, or really any real-time application that integrates with APIs. What's really awesome about Node as well is the NPM, the Node package modules. Now, if you're a Linux user, mostly Ubuntu or Debian, you know that you have this apd-get thing. You can install stuff on it. So imagine you have a similar concept, like a pool of modules that you can use in order to create awesome stuff on Node.js. One important thing, if you come from an Apache background, you will understand this very fast because, by the way, what Node.js did is it mixed the concept of Apache and PHP together. So right now you're deploying your server and your logic to in the same package. So let's get back to NPM. Here we have Express, which is a framework to deal with, it's like to create web servers and stuff. So to install it, you can either type down in your terminal npm install Express, and you can notice it will create a folder for you named Node modules. In it, you can find everything you have installed to use in your application. Of course, you can search for these packages on npmjs.org, and most of them are also on GitHub, if you like using GitHub. But a better way of installing them is to include a JSON file, okay, called package.json in your directory. In it, you can add the dependencies, you know, and you just write down npm install in your app directory, and it works fantastically. Now, Backbone.js. Like the creator of Backbone, Jeremy Ashkenas, said, you gotta get your truth out of the DOM, okay? And what I was also thinking about it, when you're using JavaScript a lot, you end up having these spaghetti codes, like a bunch of indented callbacks or something. So what Backbone does, it provides a client-side app structure, models to represent the data, views to hook up models to the DOM, and it synchronizes the data to and from the server. If you want, it plays this view/controller module. So some of the great allies in this revolution are definitely MongoDB, the NoSQL database, Node.jitsu, if you'd like to deploy your Node application quickly. I personally use Linode because I like to configure my own server. GitHub, the RESTful APIs, and the experimental stuff. The experimental stuff, you can find them on badass.js. You can find some really badass JavaScript codes that integrates with your camera, sound, and it's kind of extend the boundary of JavaScript and what you can do with it. So that's it. Thank you, and may the force be with you. Now, what's inside this box? This is a Raspberry Pi, if you heard about it. It's a hardware device. It's like a mini computer. So what I did in it, I installed Node.js. And you can do pretty cool stuff on it. If you'd like to check it out or hack us with it, meet us at Lamba Labs, the Beirut hackerspace. Thank you.
Thank you, Donald. Next up is Hind Hbaya.
Hi everyone, my name is Hind. I want to talk to you about the challenge of designing a dashboard that could interpret your personal data. But first, what is personal data? Personal data is numbers that reveal something about you. It can be numbers that indicate your health, your mood, your workouts, your social integration, and you can do it either consciously by manually inputting into apps these data that you're recording, or it can be by either recording them on an Excel sheet, but can also be unconsciously through the Fitbit that Razan was talking about, or for example, the Fuel Band, a bracelet that tracks your calories and your steps. And all of these trends of gathering your personal data is part of a movement that's growing, that's called the quantified self, where people are trying to explore themselves and try to know more about themselves through personal numbers. But the whole point of gathering this data really is to be able to interpret it in a smart way in order to gain consciousness and be mindful about actions that we do in our everyday life. So a very simple example is if you try to count the number of steps you're walking throughout the day, you can realize whether you're active enough or not. And this can help you make a decision whether you should end your day by working on your computer or taking a walk. And so I used to be a professional swimmer, and I wanted to gather data about my swimming, but I didn't want to input it manually. I wanted a device that could help me do it seamlessly, because when swimming is pretty complicated, there's lots of motions involved with the head and the arms, and I'm not going to stop every lap and record on my Excel sheet what was happening. So I created a device that I can put on my swimming goggles, and that could track my heart rate through the temples, so I wouldn't have to wear the chest belt that the available watches have. And it gave me real-time feedback about my heart rate. So while swimming, I could know what my heart rate was. And heart rate is really important in all sports, but especially swimming, because it's the real indication about how my body is actually performing. And the objective of this device was, first of all, to allow me, but also other swimmers, to be able to optimize the workout in real time and to be able to get the most out of our trainings. And so the device that we have today, it's called InstaBeat. It has a heart rate sensor from which we can get heart rate and calories. It also has two motion sensors. The motion sensors get us calories, so we compute calories from the heart rate and the motion, and in order to get the most accurate number, we can get the number of laps, the number and the duration of each flip turn, and the distance and the speed of the swimmer. And so the real challenge is, now that we have all this data, how do we display it in a smart way where the swimmer can make sense out of it, but most importantly, learn and actually be able to improve his practice? And I realized that the main challenge wasn't, the challenge is, of course, to design something smart, but the bigger challenge was actually how to get the swimmer to want to log his data on this dashboard. Because when we came to talk to swimmers, and based on my personal experience as a swimmer, we found out a couple of things. First of all, the swimmer does not swim with his smartphone. As opposite to runners or bikers. So when you're running, as soon as you're done with your practice, you directly take your phone out of your watch, or it's maybe on your arm because you're listening to music, and you directly log your training. And you can directly post it on social media. So swimmers do not have this instant satisfaction of logging their training. And the swimmer most probably keeps his smartphone not even in the pool next to him. It's most probably in a locker room that's like 50 meters away. And so there are like 10 minutes or even maybe 4 days between the end of the practice and when the swimmer logs his training. And another component that makes it even more difficult for swimming is that it's very hard to compete with other swimmers, even if you're swimming next to another swimmer. Your head is in the water, so you can't really see if he's actually, because there are milliseconds of difference. You can't really see if he's above you or if he's going faster or slower. So all of these are factors that we had to take into consideration, not to have a smart dashboard, but to have a reward system that would actually entice the swimmer to want to be competitive and to want to log his data. So what we got to is something very, very simple. That first of all, it needed to be personal. So your dashboard needed to have your identity with all of your information. Second of all, it needed to be very simple. So as you see here on the top, there's the heart rate, your summary of the heart rate, the summary of the laps, the summary of your calories. There's also an interactive graph, and this interactive is very important because this is actually the basis of the analysis. So you can pick if you want your x-axis to be time or laps, and then your y-axis can be either heart rate, laps, calories, or time. And so you're able to interpret in many different ways your workout. But the most important part is actually the rewards. The rewards are, first of all, what are going to get you motivated to log your data, but second of all, it's what's going to compare you to other swimmers. So when you have, and because since there's no way to compete on the pool between swimmers, then you need to compete on the social dashboard, on the social platforms, and this is actually the most important part of our entire analysis, and I think this is what's different from the fuel band, for example, because if I meet someone else now that's wearing a fuel band, I can simply ask him how many fuel points have you burned so far, and the competition would be direct and easy. So these are simply the challenges we faced, and this is our website. Thank you.
Thank you, Hind. Next up is Muhammad, but he's not with us, so we'll move to the next person. Muhammad Anas Ramadan. Can I ask Pete to be up ahead here and who's ever after him?
Hi everybody, today we'll talk about icon standardization for web applications. I'd like to allow me to speak in Arabic today. راح احكي بالبدايه عن تمثيل الايقونات في تطبيقات الويب. شو في عندنا حلول حاليا لتمثيل الايقونات في تطبيقات الويب، سواء من خلال الصور الاعتياديه او من خلال الفونتات الخطوط. راح اعمل تلخيص للايقونات من خلال عمل موديلينج نموذج لموقع ويب بسيط اقدر من خلاله استخلص شو في عندنا ايقونات مفتقده وفق معيار يونيكود لتمثيل الايقونات. وبالنهايه راح اتوجه ب recommendations لليونيكود اورجانيزيشن لتحديد الايقونات المطلوبه، ولجمعيه الورلد وايد ويب لمحاوله وضع تصور لتمثيل الايقونات باستخدام تقنيه CSS. الحلول الحاليه المستخدمه في تمثيل الايقونات في تطبيقات الويب عباره عن صور عاديه، كل صورة بتتضمن داخلها ايقونات الابلكيشن المستخدم. عندنا مثلا هون عبارة عن ايقونة او ايقونات جوجل مجمعة في ملف صورة واحد، ايقونات تويتر مجمعة ايضا في تطبيق واحد. باستخدام الخطوط رح نلاحظ انه الايقونة صار في إلها ادرس، صار في إلها عنوان. على سبيل المثال مثلا السبيكر الصامت صار له عنوان 1F57، السيرش ماجنيفاينج جلاس 1F50D الى اخره. لكن للاسف معيار يونيكود هذا واللي هو هذا الاصدار السادس غير كافي لتمثيل الأيقونات في تطبيقات الويب. لذلك رح نعمل مثل ما حكينا سمرايزنج للأيقونات من خلال موديل نموذج لموقع ويب بسيط اقدر من خلاله استخلص الأيقونات المفتقدة. رح نلاحظ هون انه كل كلاس بحاجة لأيقونة، وكل اوبريشن ضمن كل كلاس بحاجة ايضا لأيقونة. الاتريبيوتس ما لها بحاجة لأيقونات. في ضوء هذا النموذج رح نلاحظ بالمقارنة مع معيار يونيكود الإصدار السادس الحالي انه من اهم الايقونات المفتقده بتطبيقات الويب البرينتر، الفول سكرين، الاكزيت فول سكرين، المايم تايبس، انواع الملفات مثل الصور والبرزنتيشنز الى اخره. هذا فيما يتعلق باليونيكود اورجانيزيشن. الريكومنديشن اللي بحب توجه لجمعيه الورد وايد ويب هي عباره عن تمثيل الايقونات باستخدام تقنيه CSS pseudo element وليس HTML attribute اعتيادية. السبب الحقيقة أنه الأيقونة هي فعلا attribute، لكن أولا هي presentation attribute، وبالتالي لازم استخدم تقنية CSS بدل ما استخدم تقنية HTML. وثانيا الأيقونة الأيكون هي عبارة عن attribute needs attributes، وهذا الشيء ما بيصير إلا من خلال طريقة السودو إليمنت أو شبه العنصر. عمليا بصفحة ال HTML رح نستخدم الكوماند تاج ببساطة بدون أي attributes إضافية، فقط رح نستخدم class name. وبصفحة الملف CSS رح نستخدم تقنية السودو إليمنت بحيث مثل ما احنا ملاحظين انه بقدر اتحكم بالاتريبيوتس الخاصة بالايقونة من كونتنت، من الخط، حجم الخط المستخدم لتمثيل الايقونة، وموضع الايقونة بالنسبة للاليمنت يلي بيحويها. شكرا لكم.
شكرا محمد. Next up we have Pete.
I'm really sorry that after all these great talks, this is probably going to be really boring. So you've all got 5 minutes to have a power nap. Unless you've ever seen a directory that looks like that, or files. Hands up anyone who's ever seen things like that. Yes? Okay, you have to stay awake. So the problem is, this is obviously a talk about version control systems, and we've already covered it, so again, it's probably even more boring. The problem that we try and solve is having to save out loads of copies of folders and files. And you get with this, apparently at version 4b, the widget was working, but is that good? And was it not working in 5? You just don't know where you are, and nobody knows when you're emailing around zipped copies of things. You can very easily get lost what work got done, what is the latest version of things. Obviously, version control systems are essentially a code management tool, but they can be used for anything, you know, whether that's designers' work, Illustrator files, Word documents, anything you like. And what they do is you just have one folder that is your project, and the version control system takes care of all these. Instead of having duplicates like that, you use the tool to go from one version to another. So unfortunately, I wanted to have this be done as slides rather than PDFs, but you'll have to cope. So the idea is you have revisions or versions. And you can see you start at revision 1, that's the first version of your project, and then at 10.03, Noor decides she's improved the unit tests or whatever it might be, and that then becomes revision 2. And everyone else working on the project can share that. And you can then roll back to revision 1 if you want. Or carry on. Lathe, later on, changes the template of something, that becomes revision 3. And then me, at 9:45, I add a new widget, and it doesn't really work, and the client doesn't like it. Well, that's not a problem, because we can always go back to revision 3 very easily of whatever our code base is, and then release revision 3, rather than having to try and pull back out of any changes I made. So it helps a lot. Personally, I prefer, the two biggest version control systems in use by most people are called Git, you've already mentioned that, and GitHub is a social layer using Git and underneath it, or Subversion is also very common. Personally, I would always recommend anyone use something like Git rather than Subversion. There's several reasons for that. Git is truly distributed, and it enables all of the things like GitHub. So you can do social sharing, you can do a lot more things with it. One of the things is you don't have to actually be online to commit your code to make a new revision. So you can be on the airplane, make a few changes, make a commit or several commits, and then when you get back to your internet connection again, you can upload all of those change sets, and you've still got that very nice revisioned, versioned set of changes that you can play around with at any point in the future. Subversion doesn't work like that. You have to be connected to the server at all times, and it's very much centralized and is not as flexible as a result. Git's also got some other things, particularly for developers, where the merging of code files is a lot better. It's very extensible and supports a lot of workflows. But the most important thing about Git is that branches are cheap, what's called branches. A branch is a completely separate version of your set of files that you can work on independently. And then at some point in the future, you can merge in those changes with your main set of code. The advantage of that is essentially this, and I'm sorry, again, really boring. Please, nap away. So I've tried vainly to make this more palatable to people who aren't developers. And I said, imagine you've got a project you're working on, and you're a design house. You've got 3 current jobs to do. You've got to update a header graphic. You've got to change the main colors of the brand. And you've got to update some Office templates. 3 independent jobs to do that the client wants for tomorrow. Now, 2 of those, updating a header graphic and updating the Microsoft Office templates or something for them, are not too bad. Changing the brand is fairly controversial for any company to take on, and it might well not happen now. So, but if you go into your project and you start changing all those files, you're going to have a real problem if you want to back out of that. If they say, actually, no, we don't like those new colors, we want to play it safe, someone else on the client side gets involved and they refuse or decide it's all going to be purple. So you want to be able to safely make those changes without infecting any of the rest of your code. You want to be able to back out of that while carrying on at the same time with other stuff. So what you get with branches is the ability to do that. What we have here, I want to run over that, but I'm not, is the idea that you can create a branch for your updating the header work. You can create a branch for your changing the brand colors work, and you can create a branch for changing your Office templates work. Each of those is completely independent, and you carry on and you make your commits, you make your revisions in each of those branches, and they are completely independent. When you get to the stage that you are happy and the client signed off on your updated header, you can then merge those back in to the main branch and with each other. And then you can release them and send all your stuff to the client, and that's fine. If they decide they don't want to go ahead with that color change, you just don't merge that branch back in, and that's completely independent. The rest of your stuff is safe, and you haven't infected the rest of your code base with it. I mean, obviously, I'm talking about code bases because this kind of stuff happens an awful lot with development, but it does apply even in other fields as well. Some of the ways it works aren't quite as useful if you're not dealing with essentially pages of text, but that's the core idea. Yeah, certainly if you're a developer and you're not doing something like this and you're working on a team, you really should be, because it gives you an awful lot of power to roll out, back out of changes, to know where you are, to work in a distributed global way, as I do, and have everyone keep up with what they're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pete. Next up is Salim.
So my talk is about creating web pages that are responsive for English and Arabic. I'm Salim, and I'm working with Anghami, which is an app that lets you discover, play, and download music. And my first task was to redesign the website for Anghami. So I looked at the visitors that are coming to the website, and I noticed that a lot of them would like to see the website in English, and a lot of them would like to see it in Arabic. Also, people were visiting from all sorts of devices, from large screen desktops to laptops, tablets, and mobile phones. So it was obvious that the design had to be responsive and that we had to have two languages. So one was going from left to right and the other one was going from right to left. So when you usually say responsive design, we usually think of, let's say you have a web page with 3 columns, and instead of having them next to each other, they are below each other on a mobile phone, so that the user can read clearly without the need to zoom in. This is a very good and efficient way when you're making responsive pages for articles, for example. But in the case of Anghami, we want to sell people. We want to show them our product. And we don't want to just provide a readable experience on the mobile phone, but rather a full and pleasant experience on the mobile phone or the desktop. So this is a mock-up of how the website would look like. So on the left is the desktop version, on the right is the mobile version. And what I'm trying to show here is that we're not using traditional components that we usually see on web pages. We have sets of images, we have an image overlaid on other images, we have some text scattered. So we had to make a lot of decisions whenever we added something, where it should be on the desktop and where it should be on the mobile phone. Now the other problem is that it's in English and Arabic. So one is going from left to right and the other is going from right to left. So this presents two main problems. I'm working with CSS to design the page, and it's responsive. So it's usually good practice to not use units like pixels, but rather units like ems and percentages. And the thing is that Arabic characters are small, so we usually set the characters in the Arabic version to be 120% the size of English characters. So everything in the Arabic version is bigger than in the English version, which is fine, but then a lot of things that are next to each other in the English version become below each other in the Arabic version. So I had to take a lot of care about that, and it was the first time where I had to really think a lot about which unit I should be using in each location, and whether I should be using units at all. I usually like using floats also when I'm designing in CSS, because it lets me put an element next to another element. But the thing is here, since we have two languages each in a different direction, if I want to float an element to the left in the English version, it has to float to the right in the Arabic version. So I have two styles for each element that I'm doing. This is when I fell in love with inline block display styles, because inline blocks behave like a block, but the elements come next to each other. And what's nice about it is that it follows the document flow. So something that's going from, so if we're in the English version, things would go from left to right, and the Arabic version, things would go from right to left. So designing the website for Anghami was pretty challenging because of all these, because I had to be multilingual and responsive. But it's very rewarding because I view the website from any device and it works great. That's it, thanks.
Thank you, Salim. We had one more speaker, which is Wael, but he's not here, so we're gonna have to wrap up without him.